Carlos Sainz dropped a video of him making pancakes.
Oh, that's nice. That's
I
okay.
don't know why that exists other than is that like supposed to be like I'm imagining that I'm waking up to Carlos Sainz making me pancakes in the morning? Is that the vision for that?
Maybe that's his PR. Is that like was that a Ferrari video or was that just Carlos Sainz
I think it
doing?
might have been just Carlos, but the official Formula One account, reposted it
Of course, of course.
and put a caption of like, you're still recovering from the night before from what Carlos has done to you, and now he's making you pancakes.
Oh wow! All
It's a
right,
it's an odd choice, but
it's what an
not
interesting.
really. That's not
Not yeah,
it's
yeah.
not what's
I
um
guess.
that's just
Uh,
me inferring the intention or the meaning behind all of that
well, I'm
chaos.
I'm sure he's got his like sleepy flock of seagulls look going on too. So,
Of
um,
course. Yeah.
you know, looking kind of like down at the camera, um,
Hmm.
doing his weird thing. Word. So let's just do it. Let's it's been an interesting week. Let's get
It's
into
been a week.
it has been a week. Let's get into it, Johnny. Welcome to the F1 Files. This is our Formula One podcast. This is just a couple of best friends who have loved this sport forever, even when it doesn't love us back. I'm one of the hosts. My name is Cory Willis. I'm a writer, actor, improviser out here in Los Angeles, California.
And this is John Lepore, creative consultant designing the future for film, technology, and automotive. All right. So this week, we've got a bunch of things that have happened since we
Mm-hmm.
spoke last. We've
Mm-hmm.
got
Not the
a
least of
whole,
which the Carlos Sainz pancake,
yes, not the least of which is
pancake
Carlos
gate.
Sainz making pancakes,
Mm-hmm.
possibly seducing us through
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. I don't really know. I'm not sure what the
Yeah.
intention is there, but there's something going on there. So
Mm-hmm.
if that's your speed, don't miss that. But but for the rest of you, we've got lots to discuss about. We now have every single car has been revealed. I think
Yes.
there's a lot
Yes.
to touch on there, particularly and unfortunately the Red Bull. A lot to
Yeah.
discuss there. And
Yeah.
then elsewhere in the world of Formula One, we've just got some kind of like in the moment updates around
Mm-hmm.
the scandalous Christian Horner situation that I feel like we should touch base on.
You
Cory,
say
where
you
would you
say
like to?
in the moment, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should just very quickly check the social
Yeah,
media
I should
feeds
because
because
this has been something where something kind of explodes out from this every like 30 minutes or so for the past week. That is a good point. I'm gonna just like
yeah.
refresh.
Uh,
Woo! Oh,
oh, bless you, bless you. Um, uh, so the latest update here is that Christian Horner will fly to Bahrain tomorrow for the preseason test. So he's going to be
gross.
there. Yeah, yeah,
Gross.
yeah. Just fully going for it. So the most recent update that I had was the FIA has actually issued a statement on this finally. For
But have
Formula
they? But
no,
have they
no,
really?
it's a non-statement. It's a lot. It's this. They're basically echoing Formula One statement, which is just like, "Hey, we understand that Red Bull GmbH, which is like the automotive group, the Red Bull, not
Hmm.
not the folks in Thailand, but the people who are like heading up like the Red Bull automotive sports whatever the wing of that whole company is. So they understand that that company has now set up an investigation, is conducting an investigation, and the FIA and F1 both want these to be concluded as quickly as is possible. So that's ultimately what they said, and then they were like, "We're not going to give any further comment after we've just said that." So, like you said, John, not really an update from them. It's more of a like, "Yeah, we know what's going on. Please finish it up quickly because it's making us
Yeah.
look bad." Um, which is that's a fair assessment. It is a
That's a fair
completely fair
assessment. I
assessment.
think I think I'm uncomfortable with the fact that like I do still see. I mean, to me, I don't know. This might be my bias or whatnot,
Hmm.
but to me, this all just seems like it's gotten so ugly and so out of hand, and nothing sounds even remotely good about it, that I'm
Yeah.
still surprised that Red Bull corporate haven't, slammed the door on this and said, like, we're gonna, at the very least, we're just gonna like
Hmm.
send Christian Horner to the North Pole. And if this turns out that that
Yeah.
was not the right thing to do, maybe we'll FedEx him back,
Yeah.
or whatnot. Because
But
we've got all these other entities that are making statements.
yeah,
Ford,
including
maybe the
Ford.
most significant, in
Hmm.
coming out and just being like, hey, we just want like their statement. I forget the exact phrasing of their statement, but if you read between the lines, they were basically just like, we wish we had more say in this at the moment, but just know that
Yeah.
we're deeply uncomfortable with what's happening right now.
Yes, yes. They're like we're a family company. We want to make sure that anything that comes out of this, it doesn't reflect badly on us, a family company. Now, Ford is arguably not a family company. They're arguably not a good company. But there's and I say good companies and like there's some moral stuff in there around the founding of that company and then also the way that it's conducted itself over the past century. It's a company in the US, so every company has like some some spotted history if it's survived this long out of necessity of capitalism because that's just the way that our system
Uh,
goes here. But anyways, I'm not going to go down that. I won't go down that. uh, the
I mean, in 2024, it would
uh-huh.
seem that Christian Horner's gross and Ford is making it clear that, like, yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't sign up for that in our
Yeah.
partnership with
Which
Red Bull. So
is really really important and I think the thing that is most important about this is not just the fact that like oh wow, Red Bull and Ford have a partnership, and if Ford steps away from that partnership, that's like a devastating blow to Red Bull's ego and to their like marketing uh, abilities and the the way that they are perceived by the rest of the world. And you know, it's always been like a fizzy drinks company. Now that Ford was on board with Red Bull powertrains, it became like an actual automotive company.
yeah,
the the thing with Ford is they are basically in charge of all of the electronic components and like the hybrid electronic motor that will make up 50% of the powertrain in the 2026 regulations. So if
yeah,
Ford steps away from Red Bull, this is not just like a oh wow, they lost like a pretty good sponsor. This is like oh, Red Bull powertrains is now in jeopardy. Like
yep,
you're
yep,
like your expansion at Milton Keynes, at the place where you build your vehicles, which is now expanded so much so that it is incorporating Alpha Tauri or now the V Carb team. Like that campus basically doesn't really exist for a good reason anymore because the powertrains are now they'll have to be purchased similarly like they've been purchased from Honda. So that yeah, it's a weird dangerous situation that Red Bull finds themselves in.
So presumably, I mean, I think I'm pretty certain that Red Bull would pull the plug on Horner before they would let the Ford relationship go away. I guess I think we're
Mm-hmm.
all just a little, and I say you and I, but I know many others are a little bit surprised with how this
Mhm.
hasn't already, Winston Wolfe hasn't flown in to immediately throw Christian Horner into an acid
Yes.
filled bathtub to
Yes.
eliminate all signs of him immediately.
For those of
Um,
you who are not as steeped in pop culture, that is Winston Wolfe, who is the fixer in Pulp Fiction.
yes,
That's
Harvey Keitel
Harvey
rocking his
Keitel himself.
Acura NSX,
Yep.
and yeah, coming
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
clean up filthy messes uh, in the
Yes.
most gentlemanly of ways.
Yes.
Uh, Sorely needed here.
Uh huh.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you made a statement about something which was a wrinkle or a detail about what's been happening with this situation, how this situation has apparently been going on longer than any of us realized.
Hmm.
Can you paint a picture of what was going on there?
So apparently, this has been going on for quite some time. This entire situation at Red Bull. Um, Reportedly, this is and allegedly, this is Christian Horner's assistant, or one of his assistants, at like the middle management level, in Red Bull, and ultimately Red Bull knew about this and they offered him an opportunity to step away from the sport for quote unquote health reasons, or I want to spend more time with my family. And whenever a CEO or a person of note is doing that, is stepping away to be spend more time with their family, it is basically a code for, oh, you were doing some awful devious stuff at work and you got caught. And now everyone is trying to sweep it under the rug and get it to go away without you or the company without you or the company losing any sort of clout. So this is
So he had an out. He
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 had an
was
out at
given,
the end
which
of
is which
last
is
year.
which is that in and of
Yep.
itself is kind of like a gross mark of privilege
Oh
and
my
and
god.
whatnot, that you're
And
given
just
this,
like
like, hey,
it's
Christian, sorry to
yeah.
hear that you've been a total animal in the
Yes.
workplace and
Yes.
ruining other people's lives while
Mhm.
going about your business. But that's such a bummer, and let's make sure it doesn't bum you out too much. Instead of abruptly firing you and publicly
Yes.
disgracing you, would you like
Yes.
a whistle clean exit out of all of this? All right, so
Which is just so gross because it's such a it is sorry it just I don't want to harp on this too much, but I will harp on it because Red Bull is about to mop the floor with the rest of the fields this year. But so it's important to take them down a peg now and to like spike this now, because it's not just it's this has set the tone for the rest of the season for me, with Red Bull, and truly with Red Bull going forward as an organization. They were willing to put this person, this female employee, in such a miserably awful and unwinnable situation. They were going to pay her what amounted to be like $750,000 to just
yeah, I
keep
think it was even more
quiet.
than that. I think it was like $850,000 or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
American
just
dollars. Like, just, yeah, insane amount of hush money.
yeah, and that was going to come from not just Christian Horner but Red Bull as well. Like that, it just is so
Oh,
terrible and gross, and just feels like there's something so broken within that organization that they think that they can do something like this. It's a dangerous thing to have a
so
team in the sport
I
that does
mean,
this kind of stuff.
is there a, and I hate to play devil's advocate here, is there a scenario where, because I find it mind bending that Horner
Hmm.
also didn't take the offer of like have a
Yeah,
clean getaway
yeah.
on this.
How
Is there a
prideful do you
scenario?
have to be? Like
Yeah.
that
Is it
is
so is it
bananas.
pure prideful, which I think we we
Yeah.
definitely have feelings on Christian Horner's maybe gross level of pridefulness, or is
Hmm.
there a scenario where he thinks that there's some way that the evidence that the what seems to be the clear conversation is that there is months of evidence that has been collected that
Hmm.
presumably he's aware of,
Yeah.
and that he thinks that somehow that evidence isn't strong enough for him to be implicated in whatever's going on. Like I don't know, I don't understand this. It's
I
this
don't
is just
understand it
bizarre to
either.
me. And to me, like the pridefulness of like, no, somehow, like if it's going to come out that he was doing the things that it is purported that there is clear evidence of him
Hmm.
doing, and that his position is just like, no, somehow the world is still gonna side with me, Christian Horner. I mean, that's like the grossest miscalculation of ego and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe that's totally in line with what we would expect from
Yes.
Christian Horner.
I mean, if it
So
walks like a
gross.
duck and quacks like a duck, like it is obviously Red Bull Racing. Like that
I
is
mean, again,
clear.
I just
Like,
I
yeah.
just point back to this hour-long interview with Dax Shepard that Horner did, where all he
Hmm.
did was just trash his own employees, his own drivers, like left and
Hmm.
right, as a brazen statement of like, this is not just me sharing how I feel, but I know that I'm sharing this in the most public of venues,
Hmm.
and I am elite enough that everyone will just have to accept me, dunking on them individually and
Yeah.
talking about how I'm the puppet master of their individual destinies and whatnot.
And
Um,
and it's not just that. It's not just it's the fact that like we know that that is who Christian Horner is. Like we know that to be true. Every person who has any involvement in F1 as a fan knows who Christian Horner is. It is blatantly obvious to the point of where like the editors of Drive to Survive quite literally make him a horse's like
yeah,
it is known. The fact that he did this on Armchair Expert, that reaches millions of people who have no exposure to F1 whatsoever. So he's
yeah,
not just like telling tales out of school, he's like telling tales out of like he's on like a foreign exchange program. Like it's like that like level of like, yo, people don't know who you're talking about. Why are you talking bad about them?
yeah.
What kind of what kind of snide, just ain't I a stinker type
Yeah,
behavior?
ain't I a stinker?
Ah, God,
All right.
so
Corey, I
bad.
gotta rinse this off and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
move on to some other stuff because this is just like it's just frustrating me.
yeah.
Let's
Oh, so you're you're
can
you're you're frustrated? Yeah. Okay. So let's
yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah,
the car launches then. If you're
yeah. Oh
frustrated,
God.
John.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Uh,
Here we go. All right. So,
all right. So all the cars have been revealed.
yes, yes,
There's a few stories in there, but to me, without question, the
yeah,
number one story of the car reveals is going to be Red Bull. What's
yes.
going on with Red Bull's 2024 car?
My God, everything. My God, everything is going on with this car. There are rumors that they are bringing. Uh, oh God, it's how. Where do we even start?
So
Um,
as revealed, the car has a severely limited amount of side pod on it.
yes, yes. Almost to the point of where they had like the vertical side pod inlet, which is unique to this generation of F1 cars. Only because the Mercedes had the zero pod concept, and that's the vertical side pod and kind of this like weird dough, like dropped dough ball type of thing look on the car. But it looks like Adrian Newey has taken that concept and turned it on its head and inside out in a way. So
Mhm.
it's the vertical side pod, but it also has basically like an overbite, is what people are calling it, so that instead of the air being pushed into these inlets, which you would think of as like if you're looking at like a pitcher of water, it's like what it's the part of the pitcher that the water comes out of, that like it spills out of. It's kind of like smushed down and kind of opened up. That's basically what the inlet looks like on most F1 cars. But not Christian Horner, Adrian Newey has created a side pod that basically is like upside down and also
Yep.
has like turned it on its side. It's impossible to explain and also impossible to describe even looking at it. Um, Mostly because there might be some tomfoolery about. So Red Bull is notorious for doing these reveals where they don't really show you the car. They show you the livery, and even the livery is like the same as it's always been. So this year, they rolled out this car, the RB20, and the lighting at the actual reveal itself was just so that it cast a shadow on the side pod section, so like you couldn't really even see it, even
Right.
with like the contrast like turned way up on still photos. Like I've seen a million different interpretations of this, and there are a couple of people who have looked at this. Dr. Obbs is one person who we follow on Twitter. He's just a brilliant aerodynamicist, and he was like, something doesn't sit right with me. So it just looks like the way that the air would go into these side pods is not controlled in a way that Adrian Newey would have designed. It's just a little too chaotic. So that kind of reinforces my idea of the fact that like that's not what the car is going to look like when it rolls out in a couple of days in Bahrain. Like it's just not. It'll be some version of that, but like it's not going to look like the car that was at the launch. And I don't know what those side pods are going to look like. If they're going to look like verticals, if they're going to look like overbites instead of underbites, if they're just totally nonsense and they're not going to do like they're going to do regular side pods and this was just to throw everybody else. I don't know what this was, but I do have a feeling it's going to be very fast.
I mean, Adrian Newey is a genius
Yeah.
alien from the far reaches of outer space who
Yeah.
walks among us pathetic humans and has this incredible way of understanding the
Yeah.
way air works with these vehicles. And it's basically, yeah, like don't ever bet against Newey.
No.
um I am terrified by this. It does
Mm.
seem, though, I mean, it does seem as though this is a radical approach to the design of the
Yes.
car.
Yes.
This is not a we had the most dominant car in the field by far, the most dominant car in the history of Formula 1 period.
Yes.
And we decided we would just like carefully evolve it. It seems as though they've been borderline reckless
Mm-hmm.
in how much of a radical change they've made to the car. So there's part
Yeah.
of me that hopes that like, well, maybe, maybe there's something that happens when it's out in real world conditions and it's not exactly what they imagined it would be. But yeah,
My
foolish to bet against
yeah.
Newey.
My
Um,
biggest fear here is, and I think that I'm getting this Greek analogy correct, but the idea here is like Mercedes um, was Icarus, right? He flew too close to the sun,
yeah, yeah.
wax and
Wax
feathers,
wings
right?
melted
Yeah,
and
yeah. And Red Bull is Daedalus, is the inventor, is the father of Icarus, who was like, hey, don't fly too close to the sun. There's a limited ceiling. There's a limited bit of of fidelity that we will get with the use of these wings. And then like Daedalus escaped the prison tower, I think is what they were in. Um, But yeah, I think that Red Bull is Daedalus and Mercedes is Icarus.
I mean, is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
is it true? Is what everybody is saying effectively true, which is that Mercedes made this cockamamie car in 2022, this no
Hmm.
side pod car.
Yeah,
Newey looked at it, took like a glance at it, and like immediately was like, I admire your bravery, but that's clearly not going to work. And then was
yes.
like, but if it was to work,
Yeah, yeah.
hmm.
So
And then
basically, yeah, yeah. And he figured it out. He figured it out. So it looks like the way that we were supposed to do this, and I say we because what this is my current thinking is I think that Mercedes should have done exactly what Red Bull did, which was don't go too radical with your new design. This is a new design. Use the type of vehicle that you know works very well. You're going away from your, your 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 low rake setup is no longer an advantage. Everyone else will have the same rake on the car. So that's the rake is just the angle between or the height difference between the front and the rear of the car. And this year with the ground effects, these past couple of years with the ground effects cars, the rake angle hasn't come into play. So just go traditional, figure out the suspension, and that's what Adrian Newey did. And then you can get into the aerodynamic changes. And that is now what Adrian Newey did. So it looks like Mike Elliott got like a wild hair and was like, oh my God, this is the coolest aerodynamic design ever. And Adrian Newey was also like, oh wow, that is the coolest aerodynamic design ever. But I don't think it's going to work with the suspension setup right now. So I'm going to work on that first. And
yeah.
that's what looks like happened here. Uh,
All
so we'll
right.
see.
So one other
Whoa.
thing that I'll add on to this, there was comment from Eddie Jordan, who Eddie
Mm-hmm.
Jordan is like, he's like almost a little Horner esque himself in that
Yeah.
like he just loves to like blabber about
Mm-hmm.
anything that'll get him a few moments of spotlight. But he
Yep.
went on to say that he's cycling buddies with Adrian Newey, and I don't know why he would, if he was a friend to Newey, why he would just spill tea like this. But he was like, and by the way, while cycling, Newey told me all about their new design and explained it to me in terms that I understand that it's not just a radical new change that's going to be brilliant, but that it's perfectly poised for the kind of future evolution
Mm-hmm.
that is going to just keep in locking in more and
Yep.
more advantages.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in my mind, hearing all this stuff and the respect that I have for Newey and whatnot does lead me to think that the first race of the season, it's going to be like Max Verstappen finishes 3 laps ahead of
Yeah.
everybody,
Just
and by the
has
time we
literally
get to
lapped the whole field.
yeah,
Yeah.
and by the time we get to Abu Dhabi, they'll just be like, Max Verstappen has finished the Grand Prix weekend on Saturday afternoon
Yeah.
somehow, while
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
else will be continuing to race on Sunday. Huh.
Yeah.
We'll have to
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a good chance that that's what we're going to see, but there is also a good chance that not a good chance, but there is also a chance that somewhere within the simulation data there was not enough correlation. Like
Yeah,
there will not be enough correlation with on track performance with
we
simulation
can
data.
hope.
So we can
We
always
can
hope.
hope. Come on, Mother Nature
Somehow,
realities
yeah,
differences from the metaverse in which this car was conceived. Please,
yeah,
some
yeah,
way, somehow, make it more challenging. All right,
yeah.
let's really quickly blitz through
Yep,
any of the other notable stuff from the other cars revealed.
yep.
What else stood out to you?
So, Mercedes launched their new car with traditional looking side pods. They do have not traditional, but more traditional looking side pods. They have kind of a marriage between their almost like it's not a vertical. inlet, but it's like a horizontal inlet with an underbite that kind of swoops out and creates this like nice little slipstream for air to flow off the side pods and down to the floor. So we'll see if that works. They also did some really funky stuff with like a floating fourth wing, or floating fourth element on their front wing. So they've got like the detached first wing, and then the second element of the wing is attached to the nose cone, and then the third one is attached a little bit higher than that, and usually the fourth one is attached just above the third one. But with Mercedes, they have the end plate of the wing that has this like beautiful little element that kind of comes off and then just goes down to basically like a tube that finishes off the fourth element of the wing. So this could be something that is an interesting and revelatory design. It could reintroduce these Y250 vortices that made the outwash very difficult to deal with when we had the old spec cars. So I thought that that was interesting. They've also gone to a push rod suspension on both ends of the car. So they've got push rod in the front and push rod in the back. It's a unique design to them and Aston Martin. I believe Aston Martin did that as well. Um, so nothing says that you have to have push and pull rod. You can have both. You can have neither. Well, you can't have neither. You can have both, or you can have them the same. And it looks like that's what Merc went with. So they'll have the anti-lift component in the back, and they'll have that anti-dive, anti-squat in the front. So that's the
Mhm.
anti-dive suspension. Um, and then McLaren basically did what?
Hey, real
Yeah,
quick, can
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah,
before we leave the Mercedes, my
yeah.
my feeble, purely aesthetic two cents
Yes,
that
yeah.
I
What
want
did
to
you think?
throw in on the Mercedes. So they're bringing more silver back
Mm-hmm.
into the car. I've always enjoyed I mean the history of the silver arrows is really nice, but
Yeah.
I was always enamored with the all black Mercedes. I
Yes.
always thought that was
Yeah.
really stunning. Is it appropriate for me to say that with the car basically now the new car has more silver transitioning into it? Does this
Mm-hmm.
mean that the car will by next year have no black left to it and will be reverted to silver, and the black will be like a symbol of Lewis Hamilton's time
Yeah.
with the team?
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's absolutely correct, John. I think that is what we're looking at here. Um, that yeah, Mercedes can't help but be weirdly symbolic in every move that they make, and that is, I think that's it.
I mean that, and my understanding was their initial swing to the all black car was also
Mm-hmm.
part of like support for not Lewis, but just for many of the initiatives that Lewis was pushing forward and
Yeah.
whatnot. It's also ridiculously striking and just
Yeah.
super cool. But like I did just, I don't know, it just felt like, okay, this is a symbol of we're now transitioning out of the
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton era. um
Yeah.
and yeah, I would be almost certain that next year a all silver,
Yes.
silver, quote unquote, silver arrows Mercedes will be revealed.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be back. That said, I did hear that they had a whole bunch of positive responses from the data that they were seeing in the sim to their like whatever it was 5 lap shakedown at
Mhm.
Silverstone. So it was in the rain, but apparently they were. This is a brand new rear suspension for them, so they're like a little bit worried and a little concerned, but I guess everything is exactly where it should be with the way that that rear end performed. And they also moved the cockpit
Yep.
back a little bit. So that was like Hamilton's big thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. That was one of his key requests that was ignored.
Yep.
and set Mercedes down the path that they're currently on,
Yeah.
including losing seven-time
Yeah.
world champion Lewis Hamilton.
Yep. So then McLaren released their car mostly in digital renders, and then did like a photo op with it. But they're basically doing what Red Bull did the past few years, where they're just like not showing us what the new car is looking like. They just showed us what the livery looks like, and then showed the livery basically on last year's car with like some of the floor blanked out, but
Yep.
considering how many different reveals they did for all of their other McLarens, like it was wild to just be like, wait, that's it? That's all you're showing us? So, I mean, that this is what Stella has said and what Lando and Oscar have both said. They're like, this is a car that will, once the development comes online, we will be competing directly with Red Bull. Like, not just
Yep.
keeping up, not just qualifying on the front row with Max, but like we will be challenging them for wins consistently. So I love it. I hope that that's the truth. I don't trust that that's the truth, but I hope that that's the truth. We'll see. We will see. Anything else from this week that has popped up either on your social media feeds in the past half hour or popped into your head about
Nothing
F1?
else other than excitement is building.
It is. It is.
Then make sure you tune in with us on our next episode, because we
Mm-hmm.
will have at that point seen the first and only testing session for the
Yeah.
2024 season.
Yep.
And that will also be our last time talking before an actual race weekend. And so
Yeah.
the next time that we record an episode of the F1 Files, it will be going into our first race of
Yeah.
the season, which is
Yeah.
furiously exciting to think that it's already up on us. I mean, it's kind of crazy. The off season is always a little bit of this like barren wasteland for Formula One, but
Yeah.
certainly not this off
No.
season.
Nope.
And in theory, in those coming weeks, we may also know about what's the outcome of what's happening with Horner.
Yeah.
We will see how the cars are actually performing on track and have guesses as to who's sandbagging and who's not.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's we're basically we're back, baby.
Yeah. Also,
Right
isn't
back into it.
doesn't Drive to Survive? Doesn't that new
Drive to
season?
Survive drops Friday, the same day
Yeah.
as testing beginning.
Yeah.
So we will
So.
also have a new lens through
Uh
which we
huh.
can look back on the 2023 season. And I'm still keeping my fingers crossed for like that final episode of the
Yeah.
season having just, like it probably is even going to be like to see the final outcome of this season, click here to open a web article that's going to
Yeah.
explain to you
Yeah. Yeah.
what's
Yes.
currently happening in present day time in Formula One.
Uh,
Because yeah, everything went wild after I'm sure the Drive to Survive cameras turned off.
yeah. Well, and I guess the Drive to Survive cameras were at the Red Bull reveal as well. So there's going to be next
Mm.
season. We will get even more of the details about what is going on at Red Bull right now.
Yeah, shout out to David Coulthard, who was
Mhm.
co-hosting that car reveal with Christian Horner. We didn't even mention this, but Christian Horner
Yeah,
was at the car reveal,
literally
and
introduced.
yeah, and poor David Coulthard's pointy face looked like it wanted to origami inwards on
Mm-hmm.
itself, because he was
Mm-hmm.
just like, I can't believe I'm here right now,
And I'm not allowed to ask
chaperoning
all of the
this.
questions. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, because that's what DC does is he like will just ask questions because
Well,
he's
he's also part of. I'm pretty sure he's still like a Red Bull ambassador as
yeah,
well, which is why
yeah,
he's there in the mix. And so he's just like, but he knows he's a man of the public eye and of broadcasting and whatnot. And like you can just see it all over his face. He's
yep,
just like, I have to figure out how to play this as though I am a gracious host to this event, and as though nothing is happening. But if in 48 hours it comes out that I'm standing next to a horrible,
A
disgusting
horrible
monster,
deviant
I need to
monster.
also
Yeah.
look as though I am ahead of that and
Yeah.
aware of, and sensitive to that. So,
God,
yeah, good
what a
job, Red Bull, on making
oof.
everybody deeply uncomfortable.
God, like they just and I said this, I don't believe in collective punishment, but I do believe that that entire organization does need to be penalized because everyone has worked to cover this up in some way, shape, or form. Because if they knew about it, then they haven't talked to the media. Oh, also, all these leaks apparently are coming from De Telegraaf, which is like a Dutch newspaper, and there's one Jos Verstappen who has like an ongoing column in that paper. So if anyone is wondering where these leaks are coming from, it's like very clearly from Jos Verstappen just talking to
Oh
people
boy.
at his newspaper about this stuff, and then they're just like, "Oh, an unnamed source has told us this." It's like, okay, all right.
How not surprising.
Oh
Um,
God, just incredible. All
Amazing.
right. Well, where do you think the stock is at this point, Johnny? Because we're right before.
Stock is approaching fever pitch as we head
Yeah.
into the new season, and testing and Drive to Survive are going to only send it higher.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed. I do feel as though it's like the stock is like doing the same thing that the water signifies in Jurassic Park, where like when the
Yep.
T-Rex stomps, you're like, whoa, what was that? It's like, oh, it's coming, and it's going to be so much more serious and so much louder than we are ready for. But I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty ready for it, Johnny. I'm feeling pretty ready
Yep.
for it. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
stock is through the roof. Jurassic Park levels of hype. And where can the folks find you out there in the world or online, Johnny?
You can track me down anytime via my home base of johnnymotion.com. Corey, where can the folks find you?
You can track me down on CoryPWillis.com. And then we've also got the F1 Files on Twitter, the F1 Files on TikTok, and the F1 Files podcast on Instagram. So check us out that way. We will make sure to catch up with you next time, just like you better be sure to catch up with us on these F1 Files.